Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome back to another list of 5 films, TV shows, video games, whatever it ends up being. You all know it's going to center around horror recommendations list. And yeah, today is going to be a fun one. This is one that I don't think we've represented much on the channel, so seeing how well these videos are doing and seeing how much you guys really like these, all the positive feedback, I thought I would change it up a little bit and stray away from just specific films and kind of dive into the world of television. And yes, there's a lot of great horror TV out right now, and I just want to talk about some of the ones that I feel don't get as much love, praise, and definitely need more fans. So we're going to look at 5 underrated television shows or streaming TV shows, all in the horror universe. Kicking off this list with one that I know many of you are probably going to be very familiar with, and that is Ash vs. Evil Dead. This show is the definition of underrated horror television. This thing premiered on the Starz network, I think back in 2015 is when this started, and went on for 3 seasons, 30 episodes. And man, this is just how you execute the expansion of a wonderful cinematic universe, not even just horror. The Evil Dead franchise is something that is near and dear to my heart, as it is many of us. And I really think that the team behind this, being primarily Sam Raimi, Ivan Raimi, and Tom, I think his name is Spetsnizli. Yeah, those 3 guys were the creators of this show. They did a lot of writing for it, and they absolutely knocked it out of the park by giving us a show that not only, again, continues the love, the feel, and the interest in Evil Dead, kind of giving us more of a better mix, I would say, than even something like Rise or the most recent remake of Evil Dead were able to do when it comes to the horror and the comedy. There are episodes in this show that are really intense and really scary at times with the way they set things up, kind of giving you those original Evil Dead vibes. And then there are episodes that go full Army of Darkness, Evil Dead 2, where it's like, you're just having a whole bunch of Deadite fun. But I think all in all, this show is just 30 episodes of quality. I think it's a shame that we didn't get to see where it would continue. Starz did end up canceling it back in 2018, and I know there were a lot of people hoping that this would come back, but I think what this ended up doing was giving Sam Raimi specifically the confidence to go forward with some new Evil Dead films, which in turn we got Rise and, of course, 2 more that are on their way. And yeah, I think that if you have not taken the time to sit down and watch this show, I personally hadn't until I was gearing up for Rise, and I did like a list of Evil Dead films talking about the universe, and it was so fast. Honestly, I sat down and binge watched this show so quickly. I absolutely adored it. I mean, Bruce Campbell is obviously the star of these films and the star of this series, but I think that the real heart that you get from this series comes from his 2 co-stars, which would be Pablo and Kelly. These 2 are absolutely wonderful. I really love the dynamic that we get there because, Kelly kind of is this hard ass. She's a little bit more of like a serious type character, and Pablo's kind of that goofy, kind of sidekicky character. But everybody has time to grow and chance to kind of dip in and out of being not only funny but also pretty sad, charismatic. I'm really impressed with just the way they were able to balance the tone, especially for 30 episodes. And I should say each episode is only about 30 minutes, so it's not that big of a commitment. Those first couple seasons go by really fast, so I think that you could probably sit down and knock this thing out in about a week's time if you're just looking for something to binge. Again, lots of humor, lots of great gore, as you know Sam Raimi is known for, and yeah, you just get to spend more time in the realm of Evil Dead. And like my buddy Alex over at Beyond the Void Horror Podcast says, this is the series that shows you that Evil Dead is a timeless and honestly endless concept with just what they're able to do with this series. Coming up next at number 4, we have something that is a little bit darker, actually a lot a bit darker than Ash vs. Evil Dead, and I'm of course going to be talking about Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. What's a horror television recommendation list without some of these great horror anthologies? We have all these wonderful ones such as, the Channel Zero, and I would say Cabinet of Curiosities is one of the most underrated. This series came out 2022. We were inundated with so many horror properties at the time. I mean, this was right around the time that Terrifier 2 was hitting theaters. Everybody was still talking about Barbarian. And, of course, we had Halloween Ends still striking up some controversy for all of us. So I feel like this one got overlooked. And just with the amount of, awesome talent that's attached to it, I feel like that's super appreciated and just super sad to hear, because I think there are some knockout short films in this. And yes, each one is about an hour long, and they have some really, really intense stuff. And of course, knowing Guillermo del Toro, a lot of them are dealing with a little bit of that supernatural creature feature kind of stuff. But a lot of the names that you'll see on here are probably the two big ones that I would say delivered my favorite shorts are David Pryor with The Autopsy. Now, those of you who don't know who that is, he did The Empty Man, and that's another one we'll be talking about very soon. But then you also have Panos Cosmatos. Obviously, you know him from Mandy. He comes in and delivers a really, really gut-punchingly strange, very weird short with The Viewing. And there are all kinds of other great directors in this, like Jennifer Kent, who comes in this. You'll know her from The Babadook and The Nightingale. I love her to death, and I think that hers is also really great. There isn't a bad one in the bunch, if I'm being completely honest. And the cast is also really stacked with people like Rupert Grint, Peter Weller is in this, Tim Blake Nelson shows up for some of them. And I'll save a few more of those for surprises. There's definitely more people that you'll recognize as you go through it. But it's 8 episodes long. It's all on Netflix and is streaming. I mean, I don't think there is a bad one in the bunch here, especially if you're looking for something to kind of inch your way into the Halloween season. These get really dark. They deal with things obviously with names like David Pryor and Panos Cosmatos on this. You have stuff like From Other Realms, very Lovecraftian, but then you have simple ghost stories that get a little intense. And then you have more allegorical tales. And I think that there isn't a bad one in the bunch. Of course, again, saying that The Autopsy, which is episode 3, and The Viewing, episode 7, being my two standouts. But I think you could really just jump around and start with any of these, and you'll get a great sense for what you're going for. Everybody delivers their own unique flavor of horror here, all under the guides of the great Guillermo del Toro. So definitely put Cabinet of Curiosities on your lists if you are into anthology horror, but if you just like twisted, messed up stuff, this is also a good one for you. Moving on into number 3, and not stepping too far away from anthologies, we're going to be talking about an interesting one that I feel like, again, not many people know about or have really appreciated. And I will say that this does come with a little bit of homework if you are not familiar with the series Wolf Creek. Yes, and I'm not just talking about the series that we're going to be discussing, I mean the films as well, because Wolf Creek and Wolf Creek 2 are bangers when it comes to these kind of outback slashery kind of backwoods murder films. They are intense. The first one being a bit more grounded, a bit more rough and gruff, but the second one having a lot more just, we are going fully off the chain, lots of blood, lots of gore, and it's also just a good bit of fun and a good bit of grisly intense stuff. The opening to Wolf Creek 2 is kind of crazy. But moving into the series here, this was something that I remember coming out. It was on Stan in Australia, so us in the States here, we really had to wait for a distributor to pick this up. Luckily, people like Shudder picked this up for a little bit, so we were able to view it on there. But also, I think its new home, and where I watched it just recently, a few months ago, was back on Tubi. So I'm going to double check before I post this, and I'll put it down in the little corner here on where you can check this out. But I think this is a great show. I don't think this is a perfect show by any means. It sets itself up as an anthology, but it really means season by season anthology, which still counts. But each season, you know, you're following a different story, all revolving around the notorious serial killer of Mick Taylor. And yeah, I mean, John Jarratt is absolutely fantastic as Mick Taylor in both the films and in this. It's wonderful to see him get to reprise his role as this character. He's cunning, he's brutal, he can have a laugh, but he's also just absolutely menacing, because you just know he knows every little thing, every little nook cranny all around the Outback, and he is absolutely there to hunt you down. And I think one of the cool things that they do with this series, especially in the first season, the second season they kind of go off on their own little thing, and I think it's fine, it's more Wolf Creek, but I think the first season has the most interesting plot thread, because you have the character of Eve, who I won't say why, but she ends up going after Mick Taylor, trying to hunt him down, meeting a lot of interesting people. Granted, this does kind of put a few plot lines, a few story threads that I just feel were kind of unnecessary and can have you kind of roll your eyes at time and think maybe we're padding a little bit for time. But I still think that in the end, as a whole, this thing really does come together. And I think that it gives us, again, an awesome look at what Mick Taylor has been up to ever since, the first two films. And I really enjoyed how they handled this first season. And again, season 2, nothing wrong with it. It's a lot of fun. I could definitely tell that they were kind of pacing themselves at this point. Unfortunately, John Jarratt got caught up in some hot water with some Me Too allegations, but I am happy to report, I guess, I don't know, as happy as you can be when it's an unfortunate situation like this, that John Jarratt was actually acquitted for those. It was not true. There's a whole documentary on YouTube made by 60 Minutes Australia that's pretty good. It breaks down the whole thing, giving you all the facts and information. So I'm happy to be back in the John Jarratt camp. Again, I didn't know any of this until I was doing research for this video, but yeah, it's a crazy world out there, and Wolf Creek does a good job of showing just how crazy it can get. So definitely take a look for this bad boy. Like I said, I think it's still on Tubi, and you can check it out on there, both seasons. But yeah, let me know what you think if you guys have seen Wolf Creek. I absolutely, again, adore this series. I think it's super fun. Down to our final two here, and the second one that I had to put on this list, the next one that is really the most important to me. This is one that I absolutely adore, and it's not just for the sense of what they did with this series. It is also based off of a book, and it is also based off of real events. Now, I must say, this is, again, a horror anthology series with each season taking place, with a different event that are semi-historical. Although this is based off of some real events, they do add a little bit of some interesting, kind of out there supernatural creature feature-y kind of stuff to make it, I guess, a bit more interesting. I think the story itself is interesting, but of course I'm talking about the series The Terror, which basically the first season centers around Royal Navy expedition that was set up with the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror. They were sent to locate the Northwest Passage up between, I think, the Canadian Arctic and Williams Island, somewhere up there. They were looking for that Northwest Passage that was said to be a thing, but we didn't have it documented at the time. And so these two ships, they go out and they go to look for this passage, and they're expecting to spend maybe 2 years out there, but they get trapped in the ice, and then it becomes a fight for survival with them running low on food, running low on supplies, and they have to figure out what they're going to do, and they ultimately decide, well, if we can get off the ship and we can hike our way across the ice and get to King William's Island, we can maybe find some of the locals who will offer us some help. And along the way, you see a lot of horrid things. It is not pretty. Yes, they're freezing to death. They're dealing with one of my favorite elements that is just absolutely mind-bogglingly scary to me, is the idea that the cans that they were preserving some of their food in, that was preserved for them for the mission, they were packed with cheap canning equipment, so they are getting mercury poisoning along with battling the elements. And on top of that, it is said, it is documented in the book as well, but not as I guess supernatural or creepy as they do in this, that of course when you're up in the Antarctic, the the team had to battle polar bears, but not just any polar bears. These were very, very huge, kind of, I believe to be an extinct species of polar bear. And I'm gonna leave it at that as far as what they have to deal with, because there's a really cool mystery tied into this as well. But again, I think that The Terror is just one of my favorite, not only survival stories, but kind of an interesting way to tell this semi biographical story about this crew and this team and what they went through, by adding some horror twists to it. Because really, at the end of the day, we don't know all the events that happened to these guys. We can only infer from the notes that were found. We can only infer from, some of the remnants that were there, some of the things they left on the ship, and what they went through. And it is absolutely terrifying to think that, they went up there, basically stacked out, decked to the nines to do what they needed to do, and all of it was nothing compared to the cold and the elements, the environment, the animals. It really just shows you that, even back then, with all the confidence in the world, just how dangerous it was, and still is to this day, to travel across that area. And I adore this series. I thought that it was really well executed. Again, the first season is the one that I'm specifically talking about here. They have a second season. Admittedly, I've not checked it out yet, but a third season was announced, so this one is not canceled and is still on the horizon for us, so I'm excited to see where they continue. I love that they're kind of telling, again, these untold stories. And yeah, I think that they've got a really, really solid cast here. This is originally a BBC production, so it's one of those things where you're going to get a lot of English actors. Jared Harris is in this. So, you'll see a lot of familiar faces, maybe not fully for us in the States here, but I'm sure you'll have a few people that you'll think, oh, wow, that's absolutely insane. And then, of course, the main actor that we follow for The Terror is Karen Hines. So definitely check this one out if you are into kind of, again, the historical aspect of it, but also if you want kind of an interesting survival horror mystery story. I really like this one, and I think you guys will as well. Finally, getting to my last pick on this list, and the number one most underrated horror television show, streaming show, whatever you want to say, horror series that I think you should check out is Midnight Mass. Yes, Mike Flanagan's opus, in my opinion. I know a lot of people are going to hit me and say, what about Hill House? I think that all of them are great. This one, to me, just got very personal, and it hit me at a time when I was pretty vulnerable. I was going to be a new father. I was kind of in between jobs. I had a lot of issues going on with depression and just a lot of really mental anguish that was kind of plaguing my life at that time. I was having a hard time going to sleep. I felt like if I fell asleep, I'd be lonely, and there's all these horrible things, these irrational thoughts, I should say, that were kind of batting around in my head. And this show was one of the things that kind of kept me grounded in a way. I was able to get sucked into the story so much, and was just able to kind of fall in love with the characters and the island and the story. And I mean, this show just means a lot to me personally. And I know this seems to be, for a lot of people, Mike Flanagan's weakest series of all of them. And I just don't see that. Again, it might be the circumstances that I dealt with that made me fall in love with this show so much. But I think from a pure writing standpoint, this is just some of Flanagan's best work. I mean, you have him adapting things when it comes to Hill House and Bly Manor and Fall of the House of Usher, and I know he's really great at adapting horror, like there's no question about it, but this comes directly from his mind. This is something that he wrote. It deals with religion in a very, very honest and neutral way. Not saying that, it's good or bad, but also saying that it's like, it's okay to kind of fall out of faith and fall back in. We're all just people trying to survive at the end of the day. And they kind of tie in this really neat vampire story, and that's all I'll say is there's a little bit of something in there that I did not expect on my first time watching this. I didn't know much about it other than Luke had recommended it to me, and I was just like, okay, I'll watch it. And yeah, it just sucked me in from beginning to end. I was emotional, I was teary-eyed, I was like, God damn, Mike Flanagan, you have really cut to the heart of just what honestly a good dramatic horror story can be, and what it can do when it comes to like taking your audience on something more than just the blood and the guts and the shock and the horror itself. It's the trauma, it's the kind of build-up that we all deal with when we're at these vulnerable moments, and how we as people get by and how we rely on others. I mean, there's also wonderful characters in here that you love to hate, like Bev. Oh my god, Samantha Soin is just absolutely insane in this. She is just one of those religious nuts that just drives everybody insane. And yeah, I mean, the whole cast here is just brilliant. I love them all so much, especially Hamish Linklater as Father Paul. I think that he delivers one of like his honest to God best performances in his career, and he is somebody that now is on my radar as an aspiring filmmaker to think, man, I need to put this guy in something. I need to write a character for him, because just his performance in this is so honest, so brutal. It's just this show is probably my favorite piece of television that has ever been produced, if I'm being completely honest. That's how much this means to me. And I know maybe I have the blinders on for that a little bit, and some of you guys will say, oh, it's not that scary, it's not that intense, but there is one thing that you cannot deny, and that this is underrated. As far as Mike Flanagan's properties go, this is absolutely one that needs more praise. More people need to get behind this, and more support, because I think the fact that we can get more original Mike Flanagan properties, because again, he's adapting stuff, he's working on The Exorcist right now, which I'm excited for. I love all of that, guys, but I want more stuff directly from the mind of Mike Flanagan if this is the stuff that we're going to be getting. So there you have it, guys. There are 5 horror series that I think are completely underrated and deserve more praise, more attention. Let me know down below if you've seen any of these, and also please let me know what you guys think should be on this list, or what your list would be. I absolutely have loved seeing what you guys would add to my Maxine list and my list for Longlegs. There have been so many films that I've never even heard of that I was excited to add and will soon be watching. And of course, series are the same way. There's a lot of great horror series. There's many things out there that I don't even know about, and I want to know. I want to be exposed to it. So let me know down below if you guys have anything that you feel is super underrated, again, or if any of these resonate with you as much as they resonated with me. Other than that, guys, we got a lot of great stuff up on the channel. Not only these lists, but we did just talk about a really great religious horror film called Thine Ears Shall Bleed. It's super small. It's really great. And, of course, you have to look forward to us talking about Longlegs over the next few days. We're finally going to get a chance to see that. And, yeah, the hype is real. I am there for it. So that's all I got for you. And, yeah, so until next time, I'm Dylan Newell. And remember, stay scared.
Do the horror shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna slash your ass.